How would I define the Scottish comics community? I would say growth. For a long time, it's very much felt like a boys' club. So 2000 AD, very Marvel-esque characters and the Beano and stuff. These are very old and iconic characters and stories, but I think that the comics community in Scotland now is at a point where it sort of needs to grow and it needs to develop, because I think that there's so much talent in Scotland, and I think that it really deserves like international recognition because it does have like such a rich history, and it needs to be shown that it's not just a historical thing, it's still happening and it's still growing and it's still developing. And in order to do that, it needs to grow and more projects need to be happening, which thankfully is happening, which is very exciting.
My goodness me. I mean, it's such a special part of my childhood. I think it was a combination of the object itself and everything that it was, but also the context in which I received them. It might be that we'd gone to a school fete or a jumble or a boot fair, and I'd sort of see one glistening, like it would just be shining amongst everything else that's on the tables. And it was always like a given that if I found one, I could have one. So, and if I found more than one, I could have all of them. That was something I was always allowed to have. And then we'd come home and my mum would make a cup of tea and butter some bread. And I'd sit with these books, my new book, my new Diana book or Misty book or Judy book, whichever one it was, and drink my tea and eat my bread. And they would take me hours. I was so slow at reading them, and I'd read them back to back and just become so immersed. And it was just pure comfort and joy. And because I was so immersed in them, I really kind of picked up on how they told stories and just the nuances within the form.
I am very much still kind of a traditional artist. I do try every now and then to get better at digital drawing, but it's not something I've managed to crack yet because it's basically learning to draw again, and that's really scary. But what I work best in is inks. So I usually pencil my work beforehand, but when I'm just working straight into ink, when I'm improvising, usually just with black and white, is when I'm kind of most able to just focus on getting whatever is in my head on the page. And it's messy, and it's like very forgiving of being messy and rushed, which I'm not good at polishing my work or like coming back to things and making them better and layering in color and gradient and stuff. And I tend to get bored of things quite quickly. So if I can just put down lines and put down ink and that's it done, that's when I tend to work best and tend to be happiest with my work. So yeah, I think inks are really handy for that. I also work in block printing occasionally, and I'm still kind of figuring out how to incorporate that into comics because I think it could have really interesting potential. It's kind of the opposite of normal drawing because there's so much process to it. You have to plan exactly what one image you want, and you have to make the block and carve it out of something. And there's loads of surprises along the process. Like you never know what it's going to look like until you're kind of done. But I think that's got really interesting kind of ways that it could work in comics. So I'm kind of figuring that out a bit.
Now, I always really wanted to work in pencil. When I was cartooning in my 20s, I couldn't because the printing wasn't good enough. So you always had to work in ink. And I'd always look at my drawings and think, oh, but they're so much better when they're just in pencil. And then I kind of kill them by putting ink on them, and I really flatten them. And even with painting, I felt the same way. So when I came to do the past 2 graphic novels, I was really pleased that I could work in pencil. And it happened that I'd seen Hugo Cabret by Brian Selznick, and that was all in pencil. And I was just like, wow, this is allowed. You can do this. It's funny how we need permission. We need to see stuff to go, I'm allowed to do that. So I just decided to do something similar. I love the simplicity of it, and the fact you can do it anywhere. You can just take a sketch pad and a pencil, easy. You're doing your artwork on the train or a tube or in a cafe. But having said that, the next book I'm planning on working on will be, the sketches have been more using pencil and brush pens. So they're those, using these, which are quite nice because you can make them quite painterly, and they've got a brush tip. The only thing I get nervous about is, but what if I mess them up? Then I can't rub them out. So I also need to embrace digital skills which I will say it on tape now. I will this year. I think I've spent about 20 years avoiding doing digital things. So yes, I could do with learning some basic skills so I can just move things around on the page rather than have to start again.
But then I think I just want authentic, something I can relate to, like, or something, a new experience. Like, there's so many male characters I love and connect with, as long as they're genuine. But on one hand, I want a relatable character I can connect with. Like, I find generally right now Harley Quinn is a really relatable character that I'm so drawn to, because, okay, half of her life is completely new to me, but she's genuinely has a heart of gold and she loves her friends, but then at the same time, love bad guys and I love villains and I love not being able to connect with people as well. Like, I want an irredeemable evil character, like the Joker. I love him. Nobody knows anything about him and his sort of changing monstrous persona. And like how he's progressed through 80 years now, 81 years is amazing, and I love how we've still not figured him out, and I love that puzzle, and I get obsessed with characters, so I want to know everything about them. That's what I want to be. I want to be totally immersed in a comic. I want to be totally immersed in a story or a character.
Physical for me, for reading, certainly. I try to back Kickstarters of people I know who, if I don't miss them, like you have to be quick sometimes. At first I would back the PDF versions and then I never saw them because they come in and I don't know where they go, or I think, oh, I'll look at that later, and then whereas to receive something a year and a half later that you've forgotten about is just the nicest joy. The recent one is this. I don't know if you've come across this. It's Bystander. It's an anthology of stories, observations and witnessings from South Asia, and it's got works by about, I think it's 45 contributors, women and non-binary. So that's that kind of thing. And that for my own work, I'm thinking that probably Kickstarter is the way forward to produce work. And we've just had an LDC weekend, one working around pitching your work, your idea to a publisher, conventional publisher. And the second day was how to create your campaign for Kickstarter, for crowdfunding. And I think lots of the publishers, or some of the publishers in the UK, are using Kickstarter to fund their work. So I suspect it's a new way the publishing industry is moving.
I do a lot of work with young people. Just that's literally how I earn money these days. I work in schools. Some of them are quite excited to hear that I do work in comics. Most of them know anime and manga. So I guess what I'm really excited about is that the comics I love are still relevant and they're still important. I love that I get to talk about them. But the kids of today, the youth of today, they are online more and they're doing more and they're drawing more and thinking more and creating more and putting their work out there so much earlier. And they're doing it while interacting with cultures which I wasn't aware of till I was in my 20s. So that's probably not somewhere, it's probably somewhere I should do more of my own work, but I'm very excited by the idea that the youth of today, or what's moving forwards, is a global experience. It's Japan and America and Britain and France and all these places and some crazy amalgamation thereof. I don't think comics community is entirely global or multicultural. There's always going to be cultural mismatches and people hitting up against each other in weird ways, but I'm just so excited by the fact that kids now are getting their influences from absolutely everywhere. That's so cool to me, and I can't wait to see what kind of comics creators we have 10, 20 years from now, who started off with manga and Naruto and all of that instead of Asterix or Captain America, or what that brings, the combination thereof.
It is a year and a few days since I had to cancel all of our comic clubs, which sucked. So that's all stopped. And I was pretty quick on the everybody's about to be sent home and stuck at home. So I'd immediately turned what I do for the comic clubs into an online version. So what I would do is I would come up with a little kind of trading card comic prompt and have a little bit of artwork, and the kids collected them. One in particular has a little special box that every time you give her one, she puts it in, and then they're all color coded. And I'm like, this is why I do this. But that kind of format didn't really work for online. So I sort of switched it to be more kind of landscape image that could go on Twitter and go on our website. And it's actually had way more reach, wider reach, because we had maybe a core of about 30 regulars from week to week across 2 different age groups. But now it's like shared to school blackboards and stuff, and then school libraries are sharing them, and people from all over the UK are sharing them and being like, oh, my kid's doing this. And I'm just like, oh, but I do really miss in person, like seeing those kids every week. And I got a new job because of COVID. There's an organisation down in Liverpool called Comics Youth, and they've hired me as a remote worker, as a graphic medicine project worker. So I'm been delivering workshops with young people, and I'm doing one-to-ones with young people again. And I'm like, I've missed it so much. And they've offered me more hours, so I will actually be leaving Dundee Comics Creative Space at the end of this month.
I'd say if women are involved, it tends to be white women. Still less than I would say women in general are actually involved in communities. They're not necessarily portrayed as such. To kind of take that question and run with it a bit, I think that most marginalized identities, apart from white women, which is, the least marginalized of all the margins, are so underrepresented compared to white women. Putting a white woman in it doesn't fix it. I think unfortunately that's what a lot of that idea is like, oh, well, okay, you want diversity, here's a white lady. And it's like, that doesn't count. Yes, we need more, but we need way more of the other marginalized people than ourselves. As I say, as me, a white lady. Yes, diversity, but not just white women diversity.